Ever wondered if the iconic chemical X that gave birth to the Powerpuff Girls was more than just a mere accident? Stick with us as we unravel the untold theories behind the sugar, spice, and everything nice. Well, you see, the Powerpuff Girls are shown as if they were created by the genius Professor Utonium, who aimed to develop beings that would bring peace into the rabid city of Townsville. Though they were only meant to be created out of sugar, spice, and everything nice, that changed real quick when the professor accidentally added chemical X to the concoction from a nearby bottle. The experiment went kaboom and the professor went flying, but once he opened his eyes, before him glowed three lovely girls, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup, all with their special superpowers thanks to the accidental chemical X. With that, the newborn superheroes devoted their lives to fighting crime and evil in the city of Townsville, bringing the professor's dream to reality. Only this isn't the whole truth. You see, the full story had a lot to do with the show's primary antagonist, Mojo Jojo. In fact, the girls in Mojo Jojo were created together. Allow me to clarify. You see, Mojo Jojo was originally just Jojo, a once hyperactive lab assistant to none other but Professor Utonium himself. Only the feisty monkey was always breaking things in the professor's lab. On the day that the Powerpuff Girls were created, it was him that caused the explosion and toppled the chemical X into the pot while on his monkey shenanigans. Unluckily, he was too close to the pot when the explosion happened, and that affected him alongside the girls. Jojo's DNA mutated, making his skin turn green and his eyes pink. The impact also came onto the chimp's brain, which grew extremely large, making him go from a Dumbo to a monkey genius. He now had super intelligence and new emotions like envy and feeling inferior. Only after the Powerpuff Girls were born, the professor forgot about him entirely and eventually lost interest. Poor Mojo felt ignored and ran away, living in an alley and becoming cold and emotionless. His loneliness made him want to destroy Townsville and take over the world. When after their creation, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup started facing some tough times. People treated them like outcasts, especially at school. Meanwhile, Professor Utonium was arrested for making them in the first place, and it was all because of the stupid mayor getting mad over not getting his pickle jar opened. The poor girls waited for their dad after school, but when he failed to show up, they started feeling as if he hated them too. So they sadly tried to find their way home on foot, avoiding using their powers as Utonium had told them, and saving the town some trouble. As they walked, they heard all these hurtful remarks about themselves from the TV and newspapers, calling them stuff like bug-eyed freaks, including the mayor who shrieked about them being pickle cart killers. Like, it's just a jar of pickles, chill for a minute, damn. But just when it started raining heavily, they found shelter in an alley only to come face to face with the Gangrene Gang. With a ban on their powers, the girls were helpless before them, and it is then that no other but Jojo saved them. Now mutated with a massive brain, Jojo spoke in a funny Japanese accent and soon took over the girls' hearts.
His brain is full of brilliant ideas,
and decided to help him build a better city. Together, they built a new observatory with a giant machine that would become Mojo Jojo's future lair. Nevertheless, as a reward, Jojo sneaked the girls into the zoo, but it was not just for fun. He secretly sent teleportation devices with the pictures he took of other fellow monkeys. Later on, the Powerpuff Girls managed to fly back home. While back at his lair, Jojo activated the teleporting devices he attached to the monkeys and apes through his camera at the zoo and teleported them to his lair, where he used the very chemical X to mutate them into intelligent primates like himself. He made them evil, ripped their heads into bigger brains, and changed their skins to green and their eyes to pink. The next day, the girls thought the city would accept them since now Jojo would help restore peace with the machine they built. But they were so wrong. Jojo, now calling himself Mojo Jojo, attacked with his primate army, making sure to reveal that Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup helped them with his plan. The city is soon filled with thousands of citizens abused and attacked by the mad monkeys. Of course, the blame once again fell onto the girls, and despite them trying to convince Utonium and the citizens that they were tricked, they refused to believe them, and Utonium was heartbroken beyond belief. Meanwhile, Mojo happily planned to rule the world by replacing the human race with his primates and becoming the king of them all. Only his sweet idea wasn't about to go as planned. The problem was that he had mutated every monkey into a super intelligent version of himself, and so each and every one of them wanted to be the top ruler. Yep, it went downhill pretty fast from there, as the primates started fighting among themselves, and Mojo, in his anger, decided to take out the professor for good and swept them away. At this point, the girls who had escaped to space wishing to leave Earth forever heard the professor's desperate cries and finally decided to use their powers to save the day. Once back on Earth, they fought the monkeys and defeated them all, but when they turned to get Mojo, he tried to use the professor as a shield to save himself. However, the girls refused to back down. Frustrated, Mojo literally chugged down the whole of Chemical X, mutating into a massive, giant, angry chimp. The girls stood strong, and in time, the professor realized that Mojo can be defeated with the Antidote X, which would turn him back into his normal mutation. In a nail-biting moment, the girls saved the professor from being crushed under the falling Mojo, and Mojo ended up crashing on the antidote itself. Finally, he shrinked back to normal size and was defeated. With that, the girls emerged as the superheroes of Townsville, setting off on a journey of fighting monsters. And of course, Mojo Jojo became Townsville's evilest villain and faced his first ever defeat. It's so weird that despite going through this much, the girls aren't aware of the fact that Mojo Jojo was the professor's lab assistant before them, and not even Mojo himself knew that he, in fact, had a part in the making of Girls. Bizarrely, even the professor claimed to have forgotten him. Honestly, now I see why Mojo's so heartbroken. This is shown when Mojo sneaks into the professor's lab and snatches him, leaving a mysterious note behind. The Powerpuff Girls catch wind of the crime and rush to Mojo's hideout to save the day, only to see Mojo claim that the professor is actually his dad. He reveals the truth to the girls about how he was just a regular monkey named Jojo, and the professor was his owner who loved him very much. The Chemical X accident that created the Powerpuff Girls also affected him by turning him into an evil, intelligent monkey. But as smart as he became, nobody paid attention to his achievements compared to the girls' awesome powers. The professor does admit he did have a pet monkey named Jojo, but he can't remember much before the girls were born. Feeling guilty, he decides to make it up to Mojo by working together on a machine to give Mojo superpowers similar to the girls. That was a bad move. Because the moment Mojo got what he wanted, he turned evil and betrayed the professor, using their own strengths against them, with his super brain power added to the mix. As things go wild and Mojo starts causing havoc by breaking things in his own observatory, the professor has a light bulb moment. He finally remembers Mojo as his old terrible assistant who broke everything he touched, just like he was now. The professor replays the story and realizes that Mojo unintentionally played a part in creating the Powerpuff Girls. Mojo is left speechless upon finally realizing that he created his own arch-nemesis, and while he's distracted, the professor and the girls manage to remove Mojo's powers and escape from his clutches. As they leave, they tease him by calling him family, all while Mojo's left stunned, just repeating, "It was me, it was me."
It was me.
Well, Mojo! You see, being a villain, Mojo's usually up to no good. Only he ends up doing more good than bad more than often. Once, when an alien leader threatened to destroy the Earth, Mojo stepped up to save the day. He was so fed up with the alien copying his plans and ruining his evil dreams that he fought back with all his might and even smacked the alien with a thick bread loaf until it admitted that Mojo was the evilest. He literally scared the alien away and saved Earth. Everyone in Townsville, including the Powerpuff Girls, praised him and called him their hero. But here's the funny part, Mojo kept insisting that he was still a bad guy. In one of the specials, Mojo actually took over the world, ruling with his iron fist. Only his seriousness turned out to be something positive, and he ended up solving all the world's problems. But you know, being good wasn't his style for long. He got bored with all that peace stuff and went right back to his evil ways. Believe it or not, besides doing his evil stuff, Mojo has a regular life too. He walks around Townsville without scaring anyone, and he even goes grocery shopping legally. The Powerpuff Girls treat him like a neighbor, and sometimes even ask for his help without attacking him. So in the end, he's sort of a good guy. And besides everything else, it is thanks to Mojo that we have our sweet superhero girls. Among the three, Blossom seems to be the older one. Though she is the self-proclaimed leader, it is not bad, because the redhead appears to be more intelligent than her sisters, which makes her perfect for the role. Plus, Blossom is very orderly, having all of her things organized in a specialized place and managing the trio well. However, her constant need for perfection and order seem to be clear signs of an obsessive-compulsive disorder. What do you think? Despite that, she's smart and positive with a strong moral compass and would never miss an opportunity to kick a monster butt. The even sweeter version of her is Bubbles, the literal rainbow and unicorn of the trio. She is shown to be joyful and naive and even displays above-average programming skills. So you see, she's not just a dumb blonde, but a possible genius in disguise. Also, Bubbles loves animals, and that just adds to her cuteness. However, as the series goes on, we see her becoming more mature and less girly, but not to an extreme, like for example her sister Buttercup. Ah, Buttercup. The last but not least of the trio, this little lady is a perfect tomboy who gets such pleasure out of all the monster butt kicking. She is a sassy little happy-go-lucky tomboy who despises everything girly, and nobody dares call her princess. Buttercup can be quite rude and standoffish, and sometimes beats up others with little provocation, especially if someone tries to harm her sisters. So, a warning to all the future offenders, this Buttercup mayhem would unfold on them. However, you'd be shocked to know that the Powerpuff Girls weren't the only creations of the Chemical X. Yes, there were more. Let's start with Bliss, the girl's older sister. Before Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup were created, there was someone else, Bliss. She's about 14 years old and older than the other girls by 8 years. You see, Bliss came to life during a science showdown between Professor Utonium and his rival, Professor Neutronium. Neutronium had made a perfect little boy with artificial ingredients, and Utonium wanted to create something just as amazing, but better. So, of course, the professor decided to create the perfect little girl. He mixed sugar, spice, and everything nice, only to accidentally add chemical W, which gave her superpowers. It's funny how he does the exact same mistake on Powerpuff Girls. But anyway, that's how the perfect little girl, Bliss, was born. Professor Utonium loved Bliss and raised her like he would his other girls. But there was a problem. Whenever Bliss got too excited, scared, or upset, her emotions mixed with her powers caused destruction all around her. Bliss's destructive habits became so common that she and the professor began worrying that something terrible might happen one day. And it did. One day, Bliss got really upset over cereal without milk, and her powers went out of control. A huge explosion almost destroyed their whole house, and upon feeling ashamed, Bliss ran away to a deserted island. She wanted to keep her destructive powers away from Townsville, and hopefully to learn to control them as well. Sadly, she was never to be seen again. The professor was heartbroken and thought she died in the explosion, and so to heal his grief and to move on, he created Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup, and kept Bliss a secret from them in order to let them believe that they were the perfect creations. However, Bliss wasn't the only sister to the Powerpuff Girls. They themselves also made one. You see, the girls were working super hard, saving the town all by themselves, and the exhaustion soon caught up. They thought, why not make a fourth Powerpuff Girl to help us out? And that's how Bunny came to be. The girls used some weird stuff to make her, like artificial sweetener instead of sugar, and dirt and twigs instead of spices. And to top it all off, they accidentally added too much of Chemical X. So Bunny turned out kinda disfigured. She had the same superpowers as the other girls and a similar color theme. However, she couldn't talk properly, had a hunchback, a straight tooth, big lips, and a raggedy brown ponytail. Nothing like our Powerpuff Girls. And her genetic structure was super weak, making her a bit clumsy. But hey, Bunny really wanted to help her sisters and fight crime. Only she got pretty mixed up and thought anyone with a gun was a criminal. So when she saw two cops with crooks, she threw the cops in jail and let the crooks go, thinking they were good people. That didn't go well, and eventually the girls had to send Bunny away, only to get confronted by all the convicts Bunny had set loose while trying to fight crime. Surprisingly, it was Bunny who saved them too. She faced all the crooks she had released, trying to make things right, and she did it. She defeated every single one of them, showing her bravery. But sadly, Bunny's weak genetic structure caught up with her, and after defeating the crooks, her body couldn't hold up anymore, and she kind of exploded into a flash of light. It was a tough moment for the Powerpuff Girls as they kneeled in mourning, holding on to a piece of Bunny's dress. It's pretty sad that Bunny lived such a short time, unlike Bliss, who actually reappeared in the series, but more on that later. Not all outcomes of the accidental Chemical X were nice and sisterly. The Powerpuff Girls even had to face their rowdy counterparts made from the very same Chemical X. And it was all thanks to Mojo, who was in prison at the time, and hatched this plan. As usual, in his jealousy, Mojo wanted to make powerful beings like the girls, so he called up Professor Utonium, pretending to be a stranger from Townsville Community College, and asking for the girls' recipe for his research work. Imagine spilling the beans on literally the creation of superhuman beings, but that's exactly what the professor did. Sugar, spice, and everything nice. But Mojo, being all macho and stuff, thought those ingredients were too girly. He wanted something tougher and manlier. So he improvised with what he had in prison: snips of underarm hair, snails from the cafeteria, and a puppy dog tail, and even some chemical X from the prison toilet, giving birth to the Rowdy Rough Boys. When the Powerpuff Girls met the Rowdy Rough Boys for the first time, they nearly wrecked all of Townsville in their epic fight. And guess what? The Rowdy Rough Boys actually beat the girls, leaving them bruised and broken since they were naturally stronger than them. However, with some womanly advice from Miss Bellum, the mayor's secretary, they came up with a new plan. Instead of fighting with punches and kicks, they used something unexpected: a kiss. Yep, a kiss on the cheeks for each of the Rowdy Rough Boys. Luckily, those kisses were super effective. They had 10 times the gross out power on the boys. It triggered an explosive reaction because, you know, every little boy's biggest fear is cooties. The boys couldn't handle it, and in the end, Blossom and Bubbles thought the kissing part was fun, but Buttercup, not so much. Nevertheless, while the Rowdy Rough Boys were an easy defeat, there is one villain in the Powerpuff universe that sends a literal chill down my spine, and that's him. A villain that even the villains fear. Not gonna lie, his echoing, seductive yet treacherous voice with an ear-to-ear smile became a nightmare for me as a kid. You see, him attacks in a more manipulating fashion. In his debut in one of the episodes, he quickly pinpoints that Bubbles grows pretty disturbed whenever her sisters Blossom and Buttercup would fight, and the sinister demon hatches a plan to exploit Bubbles' sadness and innocence. Him grabs a microphone and starts speaking through Bubbles' stuffed octopus doll, Octi. He starts talking to her, whispering his wicked ideas into her ears, saying things like Blossom is too bossy and Buttercup should be the leader of the team instead. The very next day, trouble brews in the city when a giant monster shows up. Blossom, being the leader, tells Bubbles to leave Octi behind, but him convinces her to challenge Blossom's authority and way of leading the team. Bubbles even starts suggesting to Buttercup that they shouldn't follow Blossom's instructions, all thanks to him's clever manipulations. Things get intense that night as Blossom and Buttercup start arguing over their actions and leadership styles back home. Poor Bubbles is in tears until him finally reveals himself, making her realize that she's been tricked all along. Hearing Bubbles' cry for help, Blossom and Buttercup rush to the city, only to be so caught up in their fight that they're unable to cooperate. When they hear their sister in distress, they put aside their differences and save her, bringing peace back to the team and defeating him. Only this red demon does not stop there, and after a couple more appearances, this guy decides to go all out and even corners Bliss, the sister who had run away. You see, when Bliss ran off, she stumbled upon a deserted island called Bird Poop Island. She lived there for about 8 years, just chilling with animals, including a tiny elephant named Mich, and the two of them became best buds. However, as Bliss grew older, she started missing home like crazy, so she decided to head back to Townsville to see the professor again. The poor girl was beyond nervous, knowing the past she had in Townsville wasn't pretty, but luckily she found her first companion in Bubbles, who had no clue about her past. Bubbles just thought Bliss was a regular friend and started talking about her non-stop to her sisters, to the point that Blossom and Buttercup literally thought Bliss was just another imaginary friend. But soon the truth unfolded when Bliss finally got out of her shy shell and saved the girls from an earth plow. With the girls realizing Bliss is the real deal and not some imaginary friend, the professor and Bliss finally revealed her backstory. Nevertheless, the girls were beyond happy to discover themselves an older sis and even showed her around their lives as heroes. Now you'd think it'd all be rainbows and unicorns from now on, right? But nope. Bliss still had the crippling anxiety, and it showed through as she once again began her accidental destruction. In her despair, she turned to the only buddy she knew, and that was Mich. But here comes the plot twist. Mich was not an innocent elephant. It was him in disguise, and he even tried convincing her to join him, telling her that everyone in Townsville hated her. Told you, this guy's beyond twisted. Now Bliss was torn between her longtime pal, suspicions about the professor, and bonding with her sisters, and him took it all to his advantage. He eventually caused a ruckus in Townsville using Bliss as his weapon. But hey, the Powerpuff Girls weren't having any of that. Bliss broke free from him's control, and together with her sisters, they took him down for good. After that crazy battle, Bliss learned to control her powers like a boss, and became an awesome member of the team. But as you can imagine, all the chaos him caused made the solar system a bit wonky. So Bliss decided to be the space defender while her sisters protected Earth. The girls sent her off with this cute headband as a memento for Bliss to remember her little sisters by. Well, at least we can thank him for uniting the power of 4. However, when I say that him's the scariest villain of all, I mean this guy is so evil that he possibly had a major role in the creation of Chemical X itself, and even the creation of all the villains within Townsville. A popular fan theory states that a long time ago, there was once a beautiful city called Townsville, but there was also a demon, and let's just say that the safest known way of referring to this demon is simply him. Well, him eventually got bored of just watching over the city, and that's when he found a recently graduated university student called Jackson Thiesgard. Jackson's longtime goal was to create Chemical X, a powerful chemical, and him saw this as a perfect opportunity to cause destruction to this peaceful town. So he comes to Jackson in disguise as a very talented scientist and makes a deal with him, offering his help to create the Chemical X in exchange for a share of the chemical. Thiesgard accepts the deal, not knowing what he got himself into. From then on, him helped Thiesgard with all of the experiments and even handed him a special potion to use in them. However, Thiesgard had no idea that the special potion had nothing but evilness in it. Nevertheless, he managed to create a better version of Chemical X from it, called the Chemical A, and started testing on simple organisms. Surprisingly, they mutated to become the evil Amoeba Boys. Thiesgard was shocked, but him insisted that the experiments were going in the right direction. An uneasy Thiesgard continued to trust him and ended up creating even more villains that would later fill up Townsville. He created more beta chemicals like Chemical F, Chemical G, Chemical S, and tested them on many creatures like insects, animals, and even aquatic life. Some main examples are a group of bears, with one of them becoming fuzzy lumpkins, and even a group of juvenile criminals that ended up becoming the Gangrene Gang. Seriously, how does this show choose names? Thiesgard even gave a lady he had a crush on some shampoo, but him secretly put an evil potion in it, which gave the lady supernatural powers in her hair and eventually made her the evil Sedusa. After seeing the monster aliens and mutants destroying Townsville, Thiesgard was shocked and disgusted by what he had done. He demanded answers, and that's when him finally revealed his true identity and laughed at Thiesgard for being so foolish. He even flipped all of the blame onto the poor Thiesgard, holding him accountable for all the destruction and the chaos that he had caused. Thiesgard begged him to turn everything and everyone back to normal, but him refused and teleported out of Townsville. Just then, all of the citizens and even the mayor furiously screamed at Thiesgard, throwing rocks, destroying his lair in the process. The mayor even literally sentenced them to death. Thiesgard ran away, and in exile, he changed his look to be completely unrecognizable. He even took on a completely new identity and changed his name to that of simply Professor Utonium. Boom! In his depression, he created a lab monkey called Jojo, later known as Mojo Jojo, that was meant to help him, but as we all know, the monkey ended up causing more chaos. Professor Utonium perfected the Chemical X formula, which he planned to use on himself so that he could protect the city of Townsville from invading monsters, aliens, and mutants to atone for his sins. Instead of being able to do this, he accidentally broke the beaker into his mixture of sugar, spice, and everything nice to end up with the Powerpuff Girls we all love today. Now, as much as this is an excellent theory and fits perfectly with the series timeline, it does have some imperfections, like the fact that Utonium really wanted to create the girls and not make himself superhuman. But who knows, maybe it was really that. Well, whatever the origin was, the girls came out well into a town thriving with all the monsters, tragedies, and characters to give them the perfect adventures. Once, the girls even had to teach the Sandman a lesson. You see, the poor Sandman never got a break from putting people to sleep because no matter the hour, there was always night in some part of the earth. Fed up with this tiring routine, the Sandman literally invented a machine to make everyone fall asleep forever. But guess what? Everyone fell like rocks, except the Powerpuff Girls, who were total insomniacs. Fed up, he showed up at their place and knocked them out with a sleepy dust gun, and finally went to his lair to get some sweet sleep. Only the Powerpuff Girls teamed up in their dreams and came straight into the dreams of the snoozing Sandman and turned them into nightmares until the dude went right back to his job, terrified. Another time, the girls unintentionally made one of the Green Gang members, Big Billy, change sides when they saved them from an oncoming train. The guy was so moved by their gesture that he even showed up at the girls' place that night. Only he was a real trouble to be around and made matters worse in all the day saving the girls did. Eventually, Blossom got pretty fed up and scolded Big Billy away, making him rejoin the Green Gang once again. He's better there anyways. But if you thought this was the strangest adventure of all, you'd be wrong, because sometimes the monsters even made their way inside the girls' home with their evil intentions. Remember Sedusa? Well, she first appeared as I'm a Good Lady, just a regular woman who bumped into Professor Utonium at the supermarket. One look at her and the love-deprived professor went sailing in love. The girls immediately introduced themselves and the professor to Ima, setting the two up for a date, and surprisingly, it went so well that the professor invited Ima to move in right away. But Ima wasn't as nice as she seemed. Behind closed doors, she turned bossy, short-tempered, and even a bit mean. She didn't even let the girls fight crime at all, but her reality finally came forward when the girls caught her with the mayor's stolen jewels and took off Ima's wig to finally expose a daunting Sedusa. When the professor returned home, he was totally surprised and confused upon seeing the girls and Sedusa in a tussle. However, alongside adventures, sometimes the girl had to fight the hurdles within themselves as well. Like how once Blossom strangely lost all confidence in leading the group and even left home to work in a restaurant. Taking advantage of her absence, Mojo Jojo acted quickly and the evil monkey managed to kidnap Utonium and even trap Bubbles and Buttercup. Once Blossom came to know of this, she rushed to save them, but was faced with her self-struggle. However, seeing her loved ones in trouble, Blossom realized the need for her sharp brains and quickly went back to directing Bubbles and Buttercup, who saved Utonium while Blossom taught Mojo Jojo a good lesson. At one point, an evil gnome even tried manipulating the girls to trade their powers in exchange for eternal peace, and even created a trance-like utopian atmosphere in Townsville, where everyone started worshipping him. This was a situation that asked for a lot of maturity on the girls' part, and surprisingly, the girls were smart enough to realize that the gnome was tricking them and beat him up real good. Not just that, but they even lectured the townspeople about how evil and good coexist, and that there can never be a completely utopian city of Townsville. Looks like someone has grown up. Strangely, sometimes the girls had to even fight off robots, if not monsters. One of them was Professor Utonium's own car, which he upgraded into a super intelligent robot. The car became so clever that it started taking the professor away from the girls. The man became totally obsessed with it, and soon the girls decided that they need to have a talk with this robot. Once they did, to no surprise, the evil thing tried running them down. Luckily, the girls managed to regain the professor's attention, and that made his robotic car return for revenge. Only this time, it transformed into a monstrous robot that the girls had to take down for good. But despite all the adventures, probably one of the girls' biggest showdowns was when the top 4 villains of Townsville united under Mojo Jojo's call to destroy the girls once and for all. The top 4 supervillains were fed up with getting crushed by the Powerpuff Girls, so they teamed up with their weapons, Mojo Jojo with a giant robot, Princess with high-tech gear and stacks of cash, Fuzzy carrying a massive rock, and him using demonic superpowers. As expected, the girls warned them to behave and not cause trouble, but they clearly weren't ready for what was coming. The villains all came at them at once, hitting the poor girls with blaster rays before they could even react. Even Fuzzy throws a rock at them, making the villains believe they've finally won. Filled with pride, they started to call themselves the Beat-Alls. The Powerpuff Girls kept trying to stop them, but the Beat-Alls worked together and defeated the girls every single time. It seemed like they were unstoppable. Eventually, the girls got super sad and stopped trying to save the day until the professor encouraged them not to give up. He suggested they break up the Beat-Alls and save the day once more. And so the girls cleverly made Mojo Jojo fall for a white-clad chimp named Moko Jono. That is genius. Only his new love causes chaos in the villainous team. The Beat-Alls finally split up, but the remaining 3 try to keep terrorizing Townsville. In a desperate final attack, the villains go after the girls, but this time the girls are ready. Him spits acidic goo and Princess shoots electric lasers, but the girls recover quickly and defeat the Beat-Alls one by one, proving that they're a match for any villain. Meanwhile, Mojo and Moko see signs saying Beat-Alls are over, and with that, the girls arrive to finally capture Mojo, revealing that Moko is a clever chimp from the zoo who helped to stop the Beat-Alls. Let us know in the comments if you got this reference. Defeated, poor Mojo is sent back to jail once again, and Townsville is safe thanks to the fearless Powerpuff Girls. So this was the wacky world of our beloved Powerpuff Girls. If you enjoyed the video as much as we did making it for you, drop us a like and subscribe to our channel for more awesome tunes like this recapped on your feed. With that said, we'll see you in the next one. Peace!